Chris Petri here. Thanks so much for coming by. Welcome. Glad you're here. We're excited. We're going to do a beautiful barn scene here. Landscape with a farm scene, barn, beautiful big barn, numerous barns actually. We have a barn over here on the left, a barn on the right, and actually a barn and a silo over here alongside this larger structure that we just made, this barn. We have some trees, fence posts, a nice beautiful road leading us into the painting, a gorgeous fun scene. You're going to enjoy the composition. We're going to explain every detail of how you're going to get all of your subject matter, your barn and your road and your fence posts and your trees and everything into the picture perfectly. We're going to use a couple different sketching methods that we're going to show you, and then we'll cover all the details as far as your colors for your watercolor, your washes, how you're going to get all the lights and darks in this painting done efficiently. And we're going to just start in 2 seconds. All right, so we just saw our finished painting, and we're going to just work on basic fundamentals here of getting the layout of the drawing. So this is, again, a beautiful barn scene, and I thought that we would actually try to really bring a really powerful dynamic road that kind of leads into the painting. So that's the main thing I wanted to make sure I kind of wanted to emphasize with this painting. And I think all of you out there, I'm sure all of you can get this this really dynamic design into your barn painting. It's just a matter of a quick little bit of planning right in the beginning here. So I use calipers a lot, the golden mean calipers. They pretty much are wooden, and they have, small, I guess these are kind of like bolts, small bolts in it, so that no matter where you open up your calipers, you're always going to have the golden mean ratio, which is, you can look that up online. It's a really great ratio that a lot of, I would say most professional artists know about it and they use it a lot in their work, but they might not just talk about it so much. I don't really bring it up a whole lot either, because it's sort of like the really fine details of art and creating paintings and drawings and things like this. And I would say I don't always use the golden mean ratio, but I do try to use it quite often whenever I can, or I think it is important. So that's why I do have the calipers and I use them, when I can. And I guess I try to, use the golden mean many times when I'm planning out paintings, but not always. It's not like you have to do it every time or anything like that. It's just you're the artist. You figure out when you want to use it and when it feels right. And so what I'll do, though, I will use it for this scene here, this barn scene, because it kind of, looking at this photograph, whoever took the photograph used the golden mean, actually, because if we look at it here, you can kind of see that their horizon line where the road disappears into the distance, that's at the golden mean right there. You can kind of see that. So right there, that's where that road kind of like leads off into the far distance, and it kind of is like a nice mysterious road that goes into the painting, into the barn areas, and it probably goes on beyond the barns and into the fields and the farm area. And then over here too, I kind of feel like there is a natural golden mean here where the silo is. So on this barn here, you can see the silo here on set here alongside the barn, and you see silos at all the barns in the farmlands around the United States as well as all around the world. Silos, they store all their grain and everything in there, and their all the things that they're trying to store up on their farm, in the silos here. So you have that. Those are containers, basically, large containers. And so I can see that the silo is on that golden mean ratio. So I just took this and said, all right, well, let me use the golden mean here. All right, so I just made a hash mark here. That's where our silo is going to be, right there. And then I used, again, the golden mean here. And I just said, okay, this is going to be where that road is. So pretty much right here where I make this hash mark, that's going to be where that horizon line is across here, where the grass field is and the bottom of the barn and the road. So that's kind of simple. We use those two golden mean hash marks on our painting, and I think we're fine. I noticed too where the sunlight's coming from, so let's make our insignia, our sunlight, our spotlight there. I'm going to put that right here. So that's where the sunlight is coming from, this way, coming across the picture. And what else do we have? That's probably all we really need to do to start. So, and then at this point too, again, let me mention just a few things so that we kind of I just wanted to mention that I'm using Arches satin paper. I have some satin paper I had in the studio, so I wanted to use it because I really enjoy it. And landscapes tend to really be either rough or satin paper can work great for landscapes. So I have 7 inches by 10. So this is a 7 by 10 Arches, and this is also block paper. So it's a block paper satin. It's the pink cover. So if you're looking at the shopping online on your art store, art supply websites, or if you're looking on Amazon or anything like that for Arches paper, it's the pink cover. That's the satin paper. You can use the rough paper. That works great too. I would probably, a lot of times I use rough paper for landscapes because you do get some really beautiful textures and things with that, but you don't always have to use the same paper. You could do some changing, and then whatever paper you have. I also use Fabriano all the time, and as well as sometimes I even paint on printer paper and so forth to do exercises and things, so I never feel like I'm locked into any one thing. So again, I'm going to use this T-square here, and I'll maybe use the T-square to, sometimes my palette on camera here can be a little bit of an issue, so I just want to make sure I don't, so I'll put the ruler like this across, and this is the T-square ruler, and I can just set it onto that hash mark we made at the golden mean so that we get a nice even, and then the block paper gives you that perfect 90-degree angle, so you can just rest your T-square right on that block like that, and I'll just make a light, like this, a light pencil line. You can probably see that. So that's the first light pencil line I'm going to make, and then the second one is, let's make this second one here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to make one here. And again, I'm using my block paper. You can just rest it across there, across the phone, and like that. So that's going to be our golden mean, and that's going to be the silo on the barn. So this is a fun barn scene. No big deal. You're going to do this. You're going to get it done. You're going to have fun with it. You'll do it a couple times, maybe 2 or 3 times. You'll do it again maybe in a couple weeks when you feel excited and you want to do a barn scene and a landscape type scene. And really, other than that, when I look at this scene, I notice there is, so really what we can do now is let's start working on the barn and these other structures that are on this farm here. And I'm not going to get involved in many angles here. I'm just going to basically take I'm going to take that first silo like this and make that first silo just like this along that line. And that's going to be the first structure I'm going to make. And that's really simple. That's basically like a large rectangle with a small arch on it, a small like circular top on it. So that's really pretty simple. So you could just think of this as, this silo is basically a rectangle, a large rectangle. Or you could think of it as like a paper towel tube. Once you're done with your paper towels and you have that tube left over, well, that's kind of like what that is. You know, you can see things as, you know, more like, try to relate, instead of trying to think like, oh, this is a silo and now I'm drawing a silo. It's way less pressure if you just ask yourself, what does this look like? Oh, that could look like a really super large beer can, or this could be a paper towel, the paper tube inside of a paper towel, or a toilet paper, or this could be a large rolling pin for if you're doing baking and you're rolling out some dough and things like that. So you look at things and say, what does it look like? And then think of that versus trying to look at this and say, oh, this is a silo. Now I'm drawing a silo. That puts too much pressure on yourself. Don't worry about that. Look at things as just basic shapes, rectangles, squares, cylinders, because all things are really, I notice I made it a little bit too thin. It should be wider according to this drawing. So I'm going to make it a little wider here. Hope you don't mind if I take some time to do that. Okay, that looks a little better. And then again, I'm going to make a large shape for this barn over here, and I'm going to start it a little bit away from the silo because you can kind of see how there's a little bit of space in between the barn and the silo. And that's a little bit of an angle there. But I wouldn't worry about that too much. Don't worry about these angles. Let's leave the angles out of the equation. So let's come down the barn a little bit and say, well, how far is this top of the barn right over here on this silo? And I would say it's not quite halfway. It's a little bit above halfway. So if you take the silo and say, okay, that's about halfway on the silo. Halfway on the silo here. A little bit above halfway is the start of this barn here. So let's do that. Let's start a little bit above that. And then we can take a ruler again if you want. You can get out another ruler. I like to use these half-size rulers. You know, those kind of really work good. And then I just kind of hold up my ruler on the photograph and say, all right, let me just take the ruler, hold it up to the photograph where that angle is, like so, and say, okay, there's the angle. And then just drop the ruler straight down like this. And there you can get a pretty good angle if you just do it that way. Or you could take the very, very tip of the ruler like this, hold it on the angle of the roof on the barn here, and then just bring it straight down. Don't move it this way, don't move it up, don't move it down. Just move it straight down at the same time. Everything straight down like this. And you pretty much can get that angle. And I think that is pretty close. That's probably, you know, pretty close to what the angle is. And then we do the same thing over here and we say, oh, well, that's pretty much the same angle there. So if we can just lightly sketch over here and say, where is that angle like that? Yeah, that looks pretty straight. That looks pretty even, I should say. So we have an even pyramid here. You could always, if you want to get your pyramid, your the top of your barn exact, you just come down like this till you get to the bottom of your triangle over here. So if you can think of this as a triangle here, right? So that's one triangle over here, which is right there. Then you can just flip it around and you can measure and say, oh, well, how long is this distance? Well, this distance is approximately not quite 2 centimeters. Does it work better if we use some standard measure here? Well, let's use, 5/8 of an inch. So if I go 5/8 of an inch here and I come over here and I go 5/8 of an inch here, that's right where I have to land with the other side of the pyramid, like that. And there you go. Now we have a beautiful pyramid like that. By using 2 smaller pyramids, we get the perfect pyramid there. And that's the perfect angles of the top of the barn. And then we have a nice long angle over here that is not really, we don't have to worry too much. We can just see it's a sloping angle and it comes down quite a bit. It comes down pretty far. This is a large barn and we could take our ruler and we could even, again, hold our ruler up to this here and say, what's the angle on that? Like this. And just like that. Like that. Okay, so I'm just going to remove that now because we're not really using the ruler too much. And then over here, we want to look at this here. This is another little bit of a structure that's alongside the barn here. It's like a little bit of a building next to the barn, which is actually integrated with the barn, and that's nothing too fancy, just a straight line down from the top of the barn, and that's it. And then another straight line here. Plumb line, I should say. So these are 2 plumb lines here. So now you can kind of see how we did all this. It's pretty straightforward. Take your time. Rewind a couple times and watch as we go and see how we did this, but it's pretty straightforward. You get two triangles over here that make up your pyramid for your top of your barn here. Then you just take that long angle and bring it down this way. And then you have a small extension to the barn over here. And there's actually some masonry, some cement blocks and concrete over here. And there's a window. So I'll do that. I'll make a window there and some cement blocks here. And then, you know, let's not worry about these other 2 structures over here. Yes, they're there, but maybe that blocks our feeling of wanting to kind of see through this painting a little bit. We want to see around the barn too. We don't want to get blocked in so that we feel like we can't make our way through the painting. We'll just leave it at this. We'll leave it at this. This small structure over here that is integrated into the barn. Let's leave that there. And then we have our windows over here on the barn that we didn't create yet. Let's draw a light pencil line just so we can get some of those windows on there. So I'll do some of those windows here. They're a little bit higher than this window here. And I'm just going to make a few of those, and you can measure if you want to keep them even. They look pretty even for the first 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, they all look even. They look like they get a little wider over here and a little bit larger, but I'm not going to get too worried about that. And there's another 1, 2, and 3. And they don't have to be perfect, and you can do an extra window if you want. Again, feel free to, sometimes you'd want to give yourself the freedom to change things around a little bit. Don't feel like you have to draw exactly what you're seeing all the time. So now here we're going to get the other barn that's on the opposite side of this barn, and they are, I believe, they might be joined together, or they might be separate. They're probably separate, actually, but I can't tell from the photograph. So we will put the other barn in there, though, and that is really quite interesting. It's a little bit, you can see that the other rooftop over here is a little bit below this top of this barn. So we're just going to go a little lower, and we'll get that line going across like this. And it goes across this way like that. And then this line here goes a little bit on an angle like that. Not quite plumb, so not quite straight, a little bit on an angle. This angle here, like that. And then this comes out. This gable of this barn over here comes out further than the silo by a little bit, not much, maybe that much, like that. And then we come down straight like this, and it lands about a little bit below here, so that looks about good. And then we have the other part of the barn here that is here. And then there's another structure over here. We're going to put that in. That's about halfway down from the bottom of this roof eave here to the ground level. About halfway down is going to be this other structure here. And this might be a smaller barn and a building over here. And it comes out here approximately. And we'll just make it one large block like that. And if it doesn't come out straight, you can always straighten out your line a little bit, your plumb line, so that it's plumb like that. And I think that's good. And then we can make like sort of a roof on there about halfway up, if you want to. It's kind of in shadow, but we're going to leave it like this. Then we'll take another bit of, there's another barn over here. It comes up a little higher, like so. Like that. First, let's get the, so basically it's a rectangle over here. So if you can imagine all of these, well, after we did these angles with the pyramids up here on this barn and this long angle here for this roof line here, then we're having pretty much rectangles. So we have a large rectangle up here, a rectangle here, a larger rectangle here with a smaller line here, which creates a secondary rectangle for this roof. So if you can imagine, this is a roof here, like that. This is the roof up here. We're going to make this a roof, like this. And then over here we have another barn, and it's a little larger. I think it's a little closer to us. Not by a whole lot, but it is. So let's get this in. And there's a tree also right there too. So let's do that. Let's get that barn in there. And it's not quite all the way across till the edge of the page. Let's kind of leave it at that, though. Let's leave this trail off the page. We're not going to keep going with more details. And let's do this. Let's get our, we see a large tree in this picture. Here, like this. Maybe we'll make it a little larger, and we kind of have it this way, over this way. Like that. Okay, so you can change things around a little bit. I changed things. I made this tree a little larger over here, and I made it a little more shape to it. This is kind of a round shape, which looks good actually. Let's see if we can make this shape work too, a little bit different. It's not quite as round. It's kind of irregular looking. Maybe it does look better round. You can stick to the photograph or you can create your own ideas with your shapes, with your trees especially. Trees are a creative thing. You can be as creative as you want with your trees. Have fun with them. Practice your trees. I have plenty of videos on trees, so if you want to always check in and go back to some of my archives, I have tons of hundreds and hundreds of archive videos on my channel here. So I'm hoping you're going to subscribe below on the right-hand side. If you're brand new here, welcome. We're going to get right into the painting next. Just a few more pencil lines and a few more sketch lines we'll do, but we're going to take a break, actually. It's always good to take breaks. You always hear me say that. Please do. Take some breaks here and there. Don't try to be a marathon runner with your watercolors and just keep going and going and going. Breaks are good. They help you to kind of just relax a little bit, and then you can come back fresh, and you make a little more better decisions, and you kind of maybe see a few things you haven't seen, because maybe if you're going for too long and concentrating for so long, sometimes you get tunnel vision and you don't see things. You might want to put the brakes on, take a break, and then you can come back and maybe you'll see a few things you want to change a little bit. But you're the artist. You have to decide if you need breaks or not. But I always say, please take a few breaks. That's just my own personal choice that I like to do as an artist. But we will come back. We'll finish up here. But I did mention, if you're just brand new here, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. We're doing tons of great paintings like this. And again, we're going to start the painting in just a second. And we'll get into the painting, in a few minutes. We just want to do a few more pencil lines to get our road in here. So we want to just capture the road, the pencil lines the lines that lead us into this beautiful barn painting, the farm painting. And once we do that, we'll be fine. We'll add some of these other details later when we're painting, some of the fence posts and things like that. But for the most part, I think we're pretty much solid. I think we have everything pretty much good. I think this is pretty much the raw drawing that you need to get this painting done. And again, a few more directional lines with the road. We'll do that next after we take our break. We'll come right back, and I'll see you in just a second. All right, so let's get our few directional lines in here with our road. We have a beautiful stone, a road here coming into the farm area. Let's get this rooftop here too as well. On the top of this barn over here. So I'm going to get that roof in. And that's about there. So it's again another elongated rectangle. So you can imagine we're doing a lot of rectangles here. You can see all the rectangles. That's the roof over here. This will be the barn. And there's very little details in the distance over here. We see a little more detail over here because this barn's closer, if you can imagine. This barn's closer to us, and then as the barn is quite large, as it goes further away from us and sort of trails off into the distance, it gets a little smaller and we see less details. So that's just one thing we can kind of mention about the drawing. And then again, we're going to try to, this is sort of like the road in this painting is right, it comes right through here, right through this area of the painting. And then what I notice right here is you can kind of see the fencing, the fence posts here, very, very faintly, maybe on the video. Probably very hard to see, but you can see that line. There's a line there. That's the fence posts that are coming right down here like this. And that's pretty much almost like a plumb line. It's almost straight, not quite straight. It curves just a little bit like that. So we could kind of take this and say, well, yeah, that's pretty much almost a straight line. So let's make it almost a straight line like that. Okay, and then once you come down this line here, you just veer off of your plumb line, maybe just a little bit, and then sort of kind of curve it out that way, and then you have that line. So this line here, which lines up with this edge of this barn here on the right-hand side, it's pretty much straight. It's pretty much plumb, but it does curve a little bit over this way, and that's kind of a nice little soft curve. And then as we come over this way, we can kind of see the stone road. It comes over this way. And now we have to say to ourselves, in the picture, where does this road that starts here, where does it end up on the painting? Wow, it ends up all the way over here on the corner of the painting. So you can see that there's almost like a beautiful funneling effect that the artist or the photographer, whether they knew it or not, sometimes we take pictures and we do professional grade photography and we don't even realize it. So this person that took the photograph, they might not have realized they did such an incredible job, but look how good that looks. I need the longer ruler here, and I'll take my other ruler this way, and we'll kind of just line this up over here. So we're going from the approximately right here where this opening is, between these two barns, and you see there's the roadway going through. We're going to take that line, put our ruler there, and then we're going to realize that it ends up right over here at the corner of our painting. So we'll take that line and just make a light sketch line there, just so we know it's there, like that. And then I'll make it a little bit darker so you can see it at home, at your studio. I'm going to make it a little darker, like that. And then this one here, again, we said was almost straight, plumb, but not quite. It kind of curves like this, like that. So you can kind of see how beautifully that road leads our eyes and our attention right into the painting. And then we're going to make some fence posts and things, and maybe we'll just put them in quick, just so we can kind of say to ourselves, all right, let's use the photograph, because that gives us great information. This photograph gives us the best information that we could ever have as far as putting things into this painting that we're doing. So right here I see there's a large gate that looks sort of like a gate. That might be for the field over here to the left. So we notice that this gate is large, and the top of the gate is right here. It's actually right at the top of the painting, or at the top of the horizon line, which is here across the field in the bottom of the barn. So that's one thing we can kind of trust in. We can say yes. And how far does it go down? It doesn't go down all the way to the bottom of the picture. It stops actually a little bit like here. So if you can see that, this gate stops about here, and it's pretty thick, the post. So this is like a large gate, very close in the picture here. And we see some more details on the gate, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 6 or 7 horizontal rails in this gate. So you can just, you get it an approximate 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we'll get about 6 in here. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So we've done this here, and I think that's good. That looks fine. You can work out the angles a little better maybe, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to leave that just as it is. And then I'm going to notice that the fence posts over here that come this way are close together because they're far away. So the farther away your fence posts are, they're going to look closer together. And then as you're coming forward in the painting, they get a little bit wider apart from each other. And then over here, I'm looking at this one, and it sort of curves down from the top of this fence. So you can imagine the top of this fence post here. And remember too, if you're doing this painting at home and you don't want to do all the fence posts and things till later, maybe, and just do them kind of randomly a little bit with your paintbrush, you can do that too. I'm drawing them in just to kind of make it easier for myself later, so that when I'm painting later, I can just kind of zip right over the pencil lines I've created. But you don't have to do that. You can wait till later to add in some of these details. But in any case, I'm kind of going down, and I'm noticing that in the photograph, the fence posts are trailing down this way, lower and lower, and they kind of curve, and then they curve back towards up this way. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a very, very light pencil line this way, and then curve up this way. Then I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this one here. So this is going to be a fence post here, and they're thicker over here. They're thicker and wider, but they are going to get a little smaller as they go into the distance here. They don't all have to be perfectly straight like this. You can make a few a little bit twisted or bent in certain directions. That's okay. And if I feel haven't made them down far enough close to the road. That's okay. I can make them a little longer. You can paint them. You can paint them in later as you go, but I think that's good. I think that's fine. Like that. And then there's some darker bushes here, so we're going to sort of make that darker bush area here, a little bit here, just so we have a little bit of that in the foreground here. Like this. Like that. Just have a little bit of what we're seeing here, another little bit of dark bushes over here. So we add in some things that we see in the photograph, but I think that's fine. Over here, we don't really see too much of the fence posts. Maybe over here we see a few. Over here we definitely see a few fence posts over here. So I'm going to put one there, one over here, and then they sort of trail off a little bit. I'll just put a few like this. I'll put a few in like this over here just to get our, keep true to our photograph like that. And I think that's good. And then there's some shadows here. So you can put some shadows where your fence posts are. Just to remember, your shadows are going this way. I've done that before. A number of times I've put shadows in the wrong direction, and that does not look good. So remember, if your light's coming from over here and we put our light insignia, our spotlight up here on our painting, we just know that our shadows are coming this way. So our fence posts, we're going to say, are going to be casting a little bit of a shadow. It's maybe earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon. So we're going to have a little more shadowing than maybe we would have if we were in the middle of the day. But in any case, we are really all set now. Let's get to painting, right? We don't want to keep drawing and drawing and drawing and not paint. Let's paint. Let's have a fun time. This barn over here, we're just going to let it be. And we have anything else we need to do? No, I think everything looks fine. We have all the details we need drawn in right now. So now's the perfect time. Again, I like to just take a little quick stretch and just start to think about, okay, what brushes am I going to use? I'm going to start looking around for my brushes I need and pour some fresh water in my container, and let's get started with painting. All right, we're going to get painting right now. Let's start out, and I would say let's use the glazing technique here. You could do this in either the alla prima or the glazing technique, and basically, if I can just mention quickly between the two techniques, they're both really great techniques. I use both of them depending on the painting. Sometimes I'll just say to myself, this one looks like I need to use the glazing technique. Sometimes I'll look at a painting that I'm going to create, and I'll say, oh, I think I need to use the alla prima technique. Alla prima method, or sometimes I'll say, well, maybe I'll use both simultaneously and I'll just start somewhere and start working on the painting. So don't feel like you're locked into any one technique or method when you're painting watercolors, but you always want to learn kind of both separately. So you want to learn the alla prima method separately, and then you want to learn the glazing technique separately. And then after a while when you're painting for, let's say, a number of years, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then you're going to notice that you're going to maybe use a combination of both depending on the paintings, and sometimes it's just like a feel thing, and you'll get used to kind of working with both of them simultaneously. Or sometimes you might be more strict and just say, no, I'm only going to do one or the other. That's fine. You're the artist. You figure it out as you go. Those of you that have been working on my channel for years now, and you have my book, and you've seen my book with all my paintings, and you'll see where I've done alla prima paintings, and I've done my glazing technique paintings, you'll kind of see that I try to teach both methods and techniques separately, and then after a while you sort of blend them together when you need to, or when you think you have to, or it's up to you. You're the artist. You'll figure it out. But here I'm just going to go pretty much strictly. Let's just go with the glazing technique. We're going to go with a light wash over the whole paper first. Let that dry 100%. Then once it dries 100%, then we'll go in and do our darker portions of the painting, our more darker tonal values. The barn is quite dark, even though it's a lighter red for the barn, it is darker when you look at the sky, for instance. So if you look at the eyes, even if you squint your eyes, so if you take your eyes and you squint one of your eyes, or you squint both of your eyes and you look at this photograph, you're going to notice that, oh yeah, wow, if I squint, I can really see that the red barn's quite dark compared to the sky. So the sky is our lightest wash, and also the road here is quite a bit light. Like some of the parts of the road are quite a bit lighter in tonal value versus the barn and some of the shadows in the tree. So let's not get too, too bogged down here with, semantics and methods and things like this. But let's just suffice to say, let's start out with a real super light wash to kind of give the whole paper a nice coat of wash, and then we'll have that undercoating of a beautiful kind of tone on the paper. And then when we go over the top of it with our other colors like the barn and the tree and the shadows, the dark shadows and the grass and some of the other details, the fence posts and things like this, once we're going over that original undercoating or first glazing, the painting will really look pleasing because you have that undercoating. So let's do that. I'm going to slide my phone up just a touch, and I'll wet the whole paper. And I'm using a Da Vinci. This is a flat brush, 30 millimeter. And I'll just, again, lightly coat the whole paper with water, just so we have a damp paper to work with that we can get our first wash on. And it'll go on nice and easy and flow on there real beautifully. So I just take fresh, clean water and dampen the whole paper. I don't flood the paper out with tons of water. Just dampen the paper. Put a coat of water over the top. Much like if you were going to put one coat of paint on a wall, if you're painting your apartment or your home or your fence at your house, or maybe a barn that you have at your house, or a garage or something, or a garage door or a door, whatever it is, if you're painting a wall, any kind of thing like that. You just give it that good coat. You're just going over maybe the first coat. So you just want to get a good first coat on there over the whole paper. And that is really it. We don't want to flood it so there's all kinds of drips and water flowing off the table and off our working surface. Let's just get a nice bit of dampness to the whole paper. Good. Now we come in and we ask ourselves, how about our first wash? I think it should be, I'm going to say, our cerulean blue. Our cerulean blue, our raw umber. So we're going to have a little bit of warm. So raw umber and cerulean blue here. Okay, that I think is a really good wash for the first wash. Okay, maybe a touch of cobalt blue too in that blue, like that. Leave them separate so your gold colors over here, more or less your golden blue there with some of that raw umber is over here. Then you have your cerulean blue here, pretty much with a little bit of that cobalt blue. So you get a little bit of that more cobalt blue there. And then one more bit of color. Let's add in a touch of alizarin crimson. Just like that. So it's almost a purplish color mixed in there. A little bit of alizarin crimson mixed in with the two blues that we were using, which is cerulean and cobalt. And you get a purplish color there. I think that's perfect. That's going to blend right into the picture. And then we're going to use these same colors to make our barn and our other colors in the painting. We'll also add some more colors to it too. So if you even wanted to, you can add a little bit of sap green. We're going to use some of that. But I would be careful. Don't worry about your first wash. Just let's get our first wash in here. And there we go. We're off and running. Our first glazing, our first wash over the entire sky area. Just like this. And it's going to dry lighter. So always remember, your sky wash and all of your first washes here are going to dry a lot lighter. So don't worry. Add a little bit of that purplish color there too. A few little bit of strokes of color everywhere. But your main colors are going to be the green and the blue. And then more of your green color is fine over here too. A lighter wash of toward the greenish blue, because you have all your grass and everything down here on the bottom of the painting. But as you can see, it's just a matter of getting that first coat of paint on your paper, much like if you're going to create an oil painting. if you're creating an oil painting, a lot of times you're going to get that first wash of coat of paint on your canvas, and you're going to prime your canvas first with a color. Maybe it's like a middle tone. And this way, when you're doing your painting over the top, your oil painting over the top of that, you'll have an underpainting underneath that'll kind of just make everything unified in your painting. So I'll do a few oil paintings coming up in the future on my channel here, and maybe we'll even do our own oil channel too. Maybe we'll do some oil painting videos on a separate channel. I'll create another channel called Chris Petri Oil Painting or something like that. Anyway, if you're interested, I don't know if any of you are interested in oil painting, you'll let me know in the comments section. But there we go. That's our first wash. And again, you see how we just toned the whole watercolor paper with a light wash. Nice and easy. Nothing too much, with a very light wash. You can see the tone, the tonal value is very light. And it's going to dry lighter than this. Always remember that. Whatever you put onto your paper, it's going to lighten up quite a bit, probably by about half. So always remember, when you're putting paper washes onto your paper, it's going to dry lighter, quite a bit lighter, so don't get nervous if it looks a little dark. It's going to actually lighten up a bit. So I can tell you right now, this is going to lighten up to about the same tone as you see in the sky here, up here on this photograph that we have. Okay, so it's almost that light right now, but it'll lighten up a little bit more, and that'll look probably perfect with our photograph. So we're kind of trying to match the tonal values that we're seeing in our photograph here on our iPhone. And we'll be back because we have to let this dry. Remember, always your first wash when you're doing the glazing technique, we 100% have to let it dry all the way, 100%. You can use either a blow dryer if you want to get it 100% dry, or you can let it dry naturally 2-3 hours. It's up to you. I tend to use the blow dryer because I'm creating tutorials here for everyone, and I want to try to keep working and keep myself in the same, I'm trying to actually just keep with the flow of the painting and the flow of what I'm doing here. So I'll tend to want to use the blow dryer, and this way I can just dry everything quick and keep with my thoughts and with the painting and everything like this. But if you're working at home, you feel free. You can let this dry overnight and come back the next day and start working on the rest of the painting. That's not going to hurt anything. So always remember, with watercolor, you have a lot of versatility. You can let this dry overnight, come back. You can even let it dry until a week or 2. It doesn't matter. So with watercolors, you have a lot of flexibility when you're doing your paintings. You can, if you're doing the glazing technique, and you can do your first wash and then let it dry overnight for a week, 2 weeks, a month, and then come back and start working on it again, and it won't affect anything. The only advantage you have is if your mind is on this painting a lot and you're working with this painting and we're doing everything at one time like we're doing now, drawing everything, thinking about the painting and all of this, well, it just probably would make more sense to kind of do this more, expeditiously, like the next day or in a couple hours, or if you have a blow dryer, you blow dry it off and you keep working, and that's it. And then, but you have to make those decisions. You're the artist. I'll let you decide how you're going to work your watercolor paintings at this point, but I can already see it starting to dry a little bit, but I definitely want to let this dry, again, 100%. No buckles in the paper, so when I come back and work on this, there's going to be no buckling of the paper. The paper is going to be like a flat drum skin, perfectly flat and tight. And then we can go right over the top and start working our washes for the barn and the other barns in the picture, the grass fields, and then eventually some of the details of the road and the fence posts. So we'll come right back and get started. All right, so now we're going to get started. We'll begin painting the barn. And I guess what I'll do is I'll mix up some colors here. See, I'll use some burnt sienna to start with, and I'm just using a round brush, a number 6 round brush, Escoda travel brush. Actually, it's a number 8. And this is my Charles Reed series Escoda brushes, which are really great. They work excellent. They have great points. And so I'm just going to add some different reds. I'm going to add some alizarin crimson, some burnt sienna, and let's see if I can try to get some a little bit of cadmium red in there too. So what I try to do is sort of a little more alizarin crimson, I think. I try to match the color in my palette to the picture. And then I add a little bit of burnt umber and a little more, maybe some more cerulean blue. Maybe a touch of cobalt blue too. And then when I think I have it pretty close, I'm going to go with that. I think this is pretty close to what I'm seeing here. So I'm just going to start carefully getting that wash on. But I want to move somewhat quickly here. I don't want to take too much time. So I'm going to, you can use a square brush to do this or a round brush like I'm doing. There's that little bit of cement there on the bottom of the barn there, so I'm going to leave that. You can paint right over the windows. The windows are dark. They're very dark. They're like almost like a very, very dark black or like a dark, dark blue mixture of colors, but a dark tonal value nonetheless. So now I try to just keep the washes going here. And so I want to just make sure I'm sort of keeping with the flow of things. All right, so I have that. That looks good. And then I'm going to come over here too, and I'll do this side as well of this barn over here. I will go over with a darker wash over the top of that eventually. And the same thing over here, but I'll get this first wash on anyway, just so I sort of set myself up so that I'm making sure I get the washes where I need them to be. I can paint over that tree trunk because that's going to be darker. And there you can kind of see, I'm just going to look at the painting and say, all right, I see the red here. So I get the red there for this barn. Over here, this little bit of an L shape, I have that in there. That's going to be a little darker. You can see here it's darker, but I'm going to go over that with a darker wash. We'll do that next. And then over here, you can see this is all the red. And we have some shadows. We'll do those later. Right now, we just want to get that first, that initial wash on there like we're doing. And I think that's fine. That looks pretty good. And then the next thing we're going to do is we let this dry. We're just going to start to think about what we're going to do next. So right now, since we're going to make some darker washes, we can use a smaller brush. I think we need to use this is a travel brush 2. This is a number 5. Da Vinci number 4 or 5. Yeah, it's a number 4 Da Vinci travel brush. So I'm going to use this. And what I'll do is I'll come in here and we'll use some of this red that we've already mixed up. Like that. So we already have our red for the barn colors. We'll just add some darker darks. So I'm going to add some brown, French ultramarine blue as well. I want to make a little bit of a darker wash. So French ultramarine blue and brown. Get that a little bit darker. Maybe pick up a little more red there. Just mix it in. And let's do that. Let's say over here, this is darker. Let's start getting our darker tonal value that we see over here where the shadows are. So right away we can say, all right, well, yeah, I can see the darker tonal values right now over here. Let's go with the ones we can really identify. Really look at your paint, look at the photograph and say, wow, yeah. All right, I could see the red. We got that first washing of the barn with the red color, that light red. Now I'm looking at another color that's easy for me to identify, and I'm going to work on that next, and that is those really, really darks there you can see. So it's easier to kind of get those tones, those tonal values you can see, the darks and the lights, get those. That's why we do that first initial wash, because we know it's really light, so we can just get that all in there and know that's correct. Now we went in and we got that first wash of the barn. We see that's correct. It's like that reddish, light red. That's good. Now we're going in and saying, all right, let me see. All right, these are the darker darks over here. That looks good. And we didn't go so much with an angle over here, but we will add a little touch of dark there. So I'll just do a little bit of a dark there. And how about over here? We do see a dark. Yes, where do we see the dark next? Over here, we see the shadow here. And that shadow is going to look the same thickness all the way across. So let's make sure we hold that same thickness of line all the way across here. Like that. Take your time if you want to use a smaller brush than I'm using to get that shadow line in there, fine. But then there we go. What else do we have? Well, we know we have that dark, really dark windows there, so let's get that French ultramarine blue burnt umber again. And again here I'm using hardly any, you can kind of see I'm using hardly any water. Basically just straight paint, burnt umber and French ultramarine blue, straight paint, no water, just a damp brush. And that's how we get the really, really fine details. We wouldn't want to be flooding like with these big puddles here you see. You can kind of see these big puddles at the bottom of the palette here. You wouldn't want your paint to be looking like this when you're doing your darks like we're doing. Our darks. And you can also dry off your brush a little bit too with a paper towel or a tissue carefully so that you can get these darks with just very little water, almost no water, just a damp brush with paint. And that's how we get our darks in there, and you can see how we can get those in quickly, efficiently. These are the tips and tricks of watercolor you can do. But that's kind of the key, is how much water is in your washes here. So yes, when we did the barn, we wanted lots of, a good amount of water in the washes. But then once we get to these darker darks now that we're doing along the painting, as we're going along here, these are hardly any water, mostly just paint. Just mostly fresh squeeze tube paint, like that. Burnt umber, French ultramarine blue for that darkest dark, and then we get on our barn windows that we see that are very, very extremely dark. Over here, these barn windows. And this too is very, very dark. So you can go over this with a little bit of more dark, which is that straight burnt umber and French ultramarine blue. Like that. Okay. That's really going to add some real zest to your paintings. And you can also add a little bit of darks over here too. Let's do that. Let's add some dark shadow under this portion of the roof over here. Like that. It's not quite as dark, so I wouldn't, because you can look, I'm looking at the photograph and I'm saying, well, over here, I don't see a ton of really super darks on this side over here. Maybe in the tree there's some darks, but for the barn over here, right under that roof eave, there's a little bit of a dark shadow, but it's not extremely dark, but there is some really, really darks here. So let's keep that in mind as we're going. Okay, then here we have a little bit of a dark there. And there's a little bit of I would say that's a little bit of yellow ochre maybe. So I'll get a little bit of yellow ochre there. A bit of yellow ochre there, that should be fine. Okay. Now we're going to start to ask ourselves the question, all right, what tones can we start to create next? I would do the lightest light tones. Actually, now that I look at this, I would say let's do a really, really light cerulean blue. Maybe a little bit of the yellow ochre now, that we can mix that into that. Even a little bit of the red. Let's pick up a little bit of red there. A little bit of blue, some cerulean blue. Kind of like a grayish color, like that. And that gives us a kind of a nice light gray. And let's get in our roof over here. So it's a little darker than the sky, but not much darker than the sky. So let's do that first. We can see that there in the photograph. It's not quite as dark as, or it's darker than the sky, but, and then let's do the whole roof like that. Then we ask ourselves, how about over here? Maybe up here too, on the silo. We could just paint the whole silo that same kind of wash. Instead of confusing things, let's just get this whole wash done in one go. And then we'll worry about doing some more shadowing next. But that's good. We got that whole section done now, like this. We can keep working and say, well, how about down over here? I'll work this color here, which is burnt umber and French ultramarine blue. Add a little bit of blue to that. Some cerulean blue. Maybe a little more burnt umber, just to keep myself on track here. And we'll just do this roof. This roof is quite dark too. Like that. Then I can take this damp brush and just do a bit of a damp brush just to kind of give it a little bit of that roof kind of color there. And then I think this is where you're really working with your tones and trying to capture the best you can the lights and darks of everything. But don't let it drive you crazy. Again, take your time. Work with me. You know, maybe you have to stop the video a few times, a little more than you might think, to kind of keep on track with what I'm doing here. See, it's easier for me. I'm making the video. It's easier for me. I'm kind of going through my normal operation here of painting a painting. You're trying to kind of replicate and do the same thing I'm doing on video, but you actually haven't done it, and you're sort of trying to work your way through it. So don't feel like you have to just rush through it. Take your time as much as you need to, and you can just kind of see I'm trying to get my lights and darks as close as I can to what I'm seeing in this photograph, and that's all I'm doing is I'm just carefully adjusting it, you know, and saying, okay, that's the light red. We got that in first. Well, then we said, okay, well, let's get the sort of overall lightest tonal value or lightest wash for the distant roof over here and the silo. We did that. We made sure we got the darks here of this barn here, over here, and then in this shadow over here. We just made that shadow a little smaller over here, and we made the shadow under the eave of the roof over here on the barn with the really, really dark. So we're just going to keep continuing to keep looking back and forth at what we're doing and say, all right, now we can start to work some more shadows in. I think we have this as dried enough. I think that we can start working in our darker shadows for our silo. So what I'll do is for the silo, I'm going to go with cerulean blue, yellow ochre, cerulean blue, yellow ochre, like that. Maybe a little bit of this, the burnt umber, touch of burnt umber, cobalt blue, maybe a little bit of cobalt blue, and I think that looks pretty close to what we need. Let's add a little water to it, and now I'm going to try to go across and see how well I can do here. So I'm going to do this here. Okay, and then this here. This is all pretty somewhat dark. Maybe I'll go with a little more blue there. A little more blue here. I might even grab some of this red here. Let me add some of that red to blend that red color in to the barn color with these mixes over here. And this is a shadow there. Like this. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. And then I think that color can actually, we can use this same color and just go right over here and get this roof done. Because it really matches that, I think, pretty closely. Like that. Okay, so I think we are we're looking good here. I will take just a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll actually start to work on maybe the tree over here, and then we'll start to work down into the grass and the road, and I think we're pretty much will be finished. So we do have most of our painting actually completed at this point. If you see a little bit of issues with some smudges and things on your painting, you can add a little bit of water to a paper towel and just kind of like go back and forth. See how I can rub those out? So you can rub out, a lot of times you can rub out a few spots of paint you might have dripped on there. No big deal. You're probably just better off leaving them in there, but I did mention you can do that. And maybe sometimes it doesn't always work too. Sometimes the paint, sometimes it seeps into the paper and it won't come up and it won't lift up, but that lifted up okay. So the paints that we were using on this painting happened to lift up okay, and we're all right. But we're going to go over this all with darker washes and grasses and rocks and our road colors here. We're going to do some road stones and road, that kind of that beautiful road leading up to the barns. So we're going to do that next. We'll do the tree next, and then we'll finish up with our last thing we'll do is the fence posts and a little bit of the shading. But I think right now we are really almost completed. Let's do one more shadow when we come back to over here. I see there's a nice shadow that's across here on the left-hand side of this barn. So let's do that shadow next, and then other than that, I think the rest looks pretty good. All right, so hope you'll join me in just a second. We'll finish up the shadows and finish up the painting. Okay, so we're going to do a little more shadowing over here on the left side of the barn. We did mention we forgot about that a little bit. So let's get that shadowing. And we remembered before that we did shadows, we used burnt umber, French ultramarine blue. Maybe we use a little more of that red in there. Maybe a touch of the alizarin crimson again from over here. Burnt umber and French ultramarine blue. We get a good shadow. A little more French ultramarine blue. I think that looks pretty good. And then we say over here, I can see the shadow there. Like that. And it goes about to here or so. So let's take this and go like that. And we'll just get that in like this. Just kind of zip it on down like that. Okay, so that is good. We have some perhaps a little darker there. And I think that is pretty good. Let's work on our tree over here on the right hand side. I'll use some more of the same colors. Burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, a little bit of that alizarin crimson, and maybe we'll add in some green, some sap green. Pretty much though, very, very, very little water, mostly just paint. That's not too watery. You can kind of see very, very, just pretty much damp brush and paint, straight paint. Dry off a little. I dry off a little bit of the paint, and this way I can sort of get my trunk of my tree going like this, like that, and just a few little indications of some of that, the branches coming up. Then I'll come back to my number 6 or number 8, Escoda travel brush here, and we'll make some, I'll go right into here, add some green, sap green, a little bit of raw umber too, raw umber, like that. Then I'll dry off some of the paint off the brush hairs, and what I'll do is I'll just go in a circular motion, and I'll try to just do some circular, and just make a very, very simple type of some tree shapes, foliage, things like that. I think that's fine. And then we can go back in and get some burnt umber and sap green again, burnt umber, a little bit of French ultramarine blue, a little bit of darker dark, dry off a little bit of the paint, and then I just might make a little more, a few more like this, just a few more like this. And then what I'll do is maybe a little more blue for some shadowing on the right side of the tree over here, like that, with some sap green. Like that. And then maybe I'll do some splashing, just a little bit of splashing technique there. And then some green splashing too as well, up here. Lighter, a bit of lighter. Like that. So that's just some simple tree shapes over here. Probably want to do some tree shapes over here on the left side too. Kind of balance the painting out, but I want to make these smaller over here. So I'm just going to do some splashing there. Some more burnt umber, French ultramarine blue. I dry off a little bit of the brush there. So I would just maybe do a couple very, very just to counterbalance over here. And I'll just try to make sure I get the correct colors. You know, we want to use quite a bit of green here. And I just get a little more of that sap green in here. Like that. And that's going to tie into the grass. So you can, minimize or make more interesting shapes with your trees if you like. But I thought I'd make some of those trees very, very kind of light. I would leave, a lot of white paper in there. I would try to leave some white paper in the trees. Like I wouldn't try to paint them all one big blob of colors. I think that's nice to have some feeling like has some three-dimensional quality to it that you can see through it, kind of a lattice feel to it. And it's going to look good. It's going to kind of, I think, match up beautifully with the rest of the painting once we get the other washes on. So I think I'll go with even a larger brush. I'll go with a number 10 round brush here for the grass. So I'll start to mix up some grass colors. So I'll just use the colors that we have mixed up already. With some sap green. So that's going to be the predominant color. And I think I'll just go across. I'm going to paint around the fence. So what I'll do is here I don't worry about it too much, but then maybe as I get closer I might leave the fence posts a little bit, some light on the fence posts. But you can kind of see I'm just going to, okay, I might leave some light here and there on the fence posts a little bit, but I want to get that wash in quickly. I don't want it to be all blotchy looking. And then over here too, same thing. And it doesn't have to be perfect. But I would definitely match it right up to the bottom of the buildings, the wash. And this comes this way, the wash this way. Like that. And then I might just not worry about it. I'll just go right over the posts so I don't have any blotchy looking washes over here. Sometimes we just have to kind of sacrifice certain things in a painting because it just winds up, if we try to paint around all these posts, it'll just be a disaster. It'll just go terribly if we sit here and try to paint around all these posts. That's not a good thing. And then I would take a lighter version of this with some raw umber. I would add in some raw umber there, like this, and then a little bit of the red, a little bit of some blue and green. So I'm just trying to make it more of a and this kind of and you'll find that with these large sections you don't want to fuss around too much. You just want to kind of blend it all in together. So I would say this kind of area here, all of this foreground with all of the road and the grass and everything, you want that to be pretty much one wash. You try to break it, I would say, try to break it up a little bit, make it a little different. Like maybe you can kind of see how I left it a little bit lighter where the road is here, sort of like the picture, but I would not sit here and get too much involved with trying to do too much detail in this, because it's sort of, I think the final product is going to look much better if we just kind of get it in like we did here. One large wash basically with a little bit of variation in it, with the road as being a little bit lighter. You can always go in with a little bit of paper towel and lighten up a little bit too. You can do that. You can sort of, like this, sort of scrape, lightly, gently lift up with some paper towel or tissue like that, and then you give yourself a little bit of a lighter tone there for the road going in. And I think that's fine. Now the only thing we have left to do is to put in our eye stoppers, which are our fence posts, and then I think we're pretty good. I don't think we'll do a whole lot more detail. I think this is fine. You can blot up a little bit too on the tree areas if you like. Just a touch, you can blot up a little bit, but I think those look okay. And let's try coming back and just letting this dry now for about an hour or two, or if you use the blow dryer, you can come back quite quickly, and we'll come back and we'll put in our fence, our gate, our fence posts, and I think that should be fine. Maybe a little bit of splashing for some stones in the road here, so that always looks good if we have a little bit of detail here in the foreground. So we'll do that splashing for some more details in the foreground, some weeds, things like that. But we'll do that next when we come back. Let's let the painting dry off a little bit. Okay, and we'll come right back. All right, so now let's get our fence posts and our gate and some of our details in the foreground completed, and I think we're going to see everything come together looking really good. So for the, I would say the fence posts and the gates, I'm going to use some of the darker darks, the French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, a little bit of yellow, or raw sienna, like this. A little bit of the red too mixed in. So I try to repeat colors within the mixes, but doesn't have to be a lot. Just a little bit of that red in there looks fine. And again, we're mixing up the burnt umber, French ultramarine blue for some of the darks. I think that looks pretty good. And we're also going to have this kind of like this greenish bush here. Let's do this here. So let's do burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, and then some sap green. And that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to kind of do a dark over here, just for some scrubbing around here a little bit, like this, and a couple of, kind of lift up with the brush, kind of like some scrubbing upwards, like that, and a couple more over here. So I'm kind of following the photograph here. So there's some more, a couple here and there. And then there's a little bit over here too. Some lifting up of grass and weeds and things. And the more we go into the foreground, the more you'll see more details. So that's where we can kind of take advantage here and just do a couple of details here. We'll do some splashing. Okay, like that. Just some bits of details, I think, that look good. Then we'll come back up here, and then we can start doing putting in our fence posts here. So I'll put a little bit of the fence posts in here, a little bit of darks here and there, like that. And they get a little bit lighter, the fence posts, as they go this way. And I'm careful that I'm trying to be careful not to lean into my paints over here. So we'll just try to And then if I need even a thinner brush, I use my needlepoint brush here. And this will get us even some finer points here and lines. Like that, like this. So we're just trying to get in the details here. And these really go a long way in the painting, because actually this is the same as our photograph. We're using our photograph as a reference always. So if we're sticking close to reality of what we're actually seeing out here when we're here, we don't mind going off the plan a little bit, or off the exactly what we're seeing. You can have an artist liberty to do things the way you like. You can enhance your artwork anytime you want to, as much as you want to. You're the artist. No one tells us, as an artist, no one tells us what we have to do or don't do. You can create things any way you want to, actually. So here I'm just trying to get a few couple of details here. So I'll put in some barbed wire there, maybe some details with that. And then the same thing over here. Some barbed wire. Doesn't have to be everywhere, just a couple indications of it here and there. You'd see more of it closer to us here. So the closer you are to the foreground in the picture, the more detail you see. And then as you go into the distance, you don't see as much detail. And then we'll go back over to our... So I'll get this fence post here, like that. And then underside of the fence post there. So I'll do some of the underside of the fence railing there, and try to add a little more shadow to it. Like this. And then of course, I'll just take some of the sap green, raw umber, pretty much straight paint, not too much water. More sap green. And this might be where we can add a few details here along the fence posts. As we go into the distance, we're not going to see this type of detail as much, but here in the foreground, and we can also, we might even that might be fine. You can even add a little darker darks to that, a little bit of sap green, maybe a little bit of French ultramarine blue, sap green, burnt umber, raw umber, just a little bit of a darker dark, but the same thing, and just a few of those. Like that. You can add a little bit of darks there, just to make a little bit of a that. Then over here in the distance, we might add a couple of windows. I might add a few squares here. Maybe it's nice to add a door too. And that's about it. I think that's fine. You know, a few more splashes maybe here in the bottom of the picture, just to loosen things up a bit. Maybe some stones, some yellow, golden color stones maybe, where the road is. Give it some texture. And that's about it. So I think we've had a fun time. We've actually had some good really good practice here on our design of the painting, the washes, the glazing technique. We kind of also did some alla prima technique, as you can probably see. We did paint a lot of things just straight away without really worrying too much about glazings one over the top of the other. But kind of this is more or less a conglomeration of the glazing technique and the alla prima technique. I hope you had fun on this painting. I hope you'll try this one a few different times. I think if you do this painting more than one time, it'll get easier as it goes, because it is a little bit more of some drawings in the drawing in the beginning, which takes us a little bit of time getting our rectangles and some of our triangles really accurate to the picture. But then once that is completed and we have the drawing done, then it's more or less we're keying in on the darks and lights of the paintings and the washes, and we covered all the colors here. So I'm glad you joined along. I'm sure you can do a great job on this and have fun creating this painting. I hope you'll put it in a frame if it comes out really well for yourself. Pin it up on the wall, put it on the refrigerator. Be excited if it comes out really good. If it's not a great painting or something doesn't turn out right when you start it, just take it, put it aside, grab another sheet of paper, and start again. And that's all you have to do. If you have a painting that's kind of going wrong from the beginning and you're getting a little bit like it's just weighing too much on you, that's the perfect time. You just take that sheet of paper and you set it aside. You can always use the back of the paper another time, in a month or two or whatever. But then you just start again, start another one, and it'll be good too, because you'll be doing it a second time from the beginning, which means it'll be a little easier to start from the beginning. I'm not saying anything's going to go wrong with your paintings at all, but if you have problems with your paintings, and I always have problems with my paintings, ever since I started, and even now, I'm still at times I start a painting and it doesn't come out that good, or it starts off the wrong way or whatever, and that's just when I set it aside and I start another one. So again, always remember, have fun with your paintings, and again, if anything goes wrong, just remember you can start another one. Don't worry about it, and we're going to keep coming back week after week, month after month, and year after year here on my channel. We're just doing nothing but working at our paintings, getting better and better. Thank you so much for all your great comments in the comments section, your kind comments, your uplifting comments, and also too putting in some really interesting insights into the comment section, so that other artists that are kind of coming up through the ranks, that are just starting out, they're learning from the things that you put into the comment section, good things that they can learn from that are going to help them as artists. So appreciate everyone's input as we go. And again, I hope you had a lot of fun with this barn painting and landscape style painting. We'll see you soon. All right, so I just forgot to mention that we're going to add in a couple of things here. I'm just using a little bit of titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre in the top of the titanium white, just to give the tops of these posts a little bit of light. So I'm just going to add a couple of these white highlights. I hope you don't mind. The same thing over here. I'm going to add a few lights to the top of maybe a few spots here. Couple of highlights across the top of this gate here. So I'm just adding some of that, again, titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre. Just a little bit on the tops here. This can definitely add a little bit of add a little bit of sparkle to the painting, so I can add a couple splashes here too, also with that white, just for some effects, you know, like some stone. Maybe there's some white stones, some light bouncing off things. But you'll find a little bit of that white highlight will definitely add a little bit of interesting effects to your painting. And I also mentioned too right now is I did want to add some shadowing for the fence posts. We do have shadowing on the barn. So what I'll do is I'll just take my palette one more time, set it down here, and I'll just mix up a little bit of like a alizarin crimson and cobalt blue. So that's all you have to remember is a little bit of alizarin crimson and cobalt blue to make a little bit of a shadow color, which would be like a purple. Maybe a little bit of, actually alizarin crimson and French ultramarine blue really is a beautiful shadow color. And then I'll just try to add some of that here. Like this, just for these posts. Okay, they're not too much here. And just a little bit over here too. So if we add them over here too, and this probably goes like this too. Like that. So you can add a few shadows here and there. We have them in the barn everywhere, and on the silo we have the shadows, and over here. So if we just add them everywhere else, I think we're okay. We can even add a little bit under the, like that. Touch of shadows, a touch of white, a titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre mixed in the top of the paint. So that's all I did, add a little bit of yellow ochre to the top of the paint tube to get some highlights on the tops of the fence, a few spots here and there, but not too much, just a few little touches here and there. And then we did a little bit of the shadowing with a little bit of the purple we mixed with our alizarin crimson that we used and our French ultramarine that we used in the painting. So that makes a nice purple shadow color, and we added some of that to the fence posts, of course, the gate, underneath the trees, just a tiny, tiny bit, just a subtle bit of it. It looks so much better. Don't get too caught up in adding too much, because then that'll really, at the end of the painting, you always want to be extremely careful with how much detail you add. But I think if you just add a very, very tiny bit, a subtle amount of a little bit of lights and a little bit of that purple shadowing, you'll notice that it really does kind of just crispen everything up a little bit more, makes it more interesting, the painting, okay? And read true to the photograph that we used. All right, so we'll be back again before you know it. Thanks again for coming by, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Happy painting.